Name is Dr. Macapagal and my dear colleagues. So I'm Mr. Luigi A. Martinez and my report is about Hantes projective technique. Right. So, okay, Hantes as a projective technique. Okay, what is Hantes? So, according to Wagner, Hantes is a projective technique which he developed in 1962 and a new projective technique in response to the growing demands and the continuous evolution of psychology as a science. So if you can see on the left portion of the screen, you have here ink blot. It's actually the response on the kumbaga, incapacity of ink blot to interpret kasi hindi nagre-respond yung mga client, especially if they have certain I think it's disorder. They cannot simply describe the picture because it's too ambiguous and it's not familiar to them. That's why uh, there is the existence of Hantes is already developed by Wagner. So according to Naem, it is one of the most popular and reputable projective techniques and diagnostic measure. It's so popular that according to him, many of the researchers or clinicians use this projective techniques to measure certain personality and behavior. Okay, so what is it all about? So the hand test is a simple projective technique devised to measure any particular suppressed behavior or hidden behavior on the client. And not only that, according to Wagner, this projective technique was first used to form predicting certain overt aggressive behavior but later have been used as an instrument for general diagnostics. So it's not only for predicting overt aggressive behavior but also for general diagnostics. Remember, uh, to the next topic, the four domains of hand test and its subcategories. So when we say four domains of hand test, it is the how the response of the students were categorized on this hand test. So we have interpersonal domain. So when you say interpersonal, okay, interpersonal responses involving interchange or bestowment of pleasure, affection, or friendly feeling. For example, you identify that picture as shaking hands with an old friend. So this is a fall from the interpersonal domain. So for to those responses who falls from this domain, they are considered as normal lang yung kanilang um, responses. Okay, so the first domain of Hantes has subcategories that encompasses affection, communication, dependence, exhibition, direction, and aggression. So these are the subcategories of this domain. So let's now proceed to subcategories of interpersonal. We have dependence. So dependence, the respondent views the hand gesture as when the response when the when the respondents responds to the picture is like this, begging or praying for help or hitchhike tumbling a ride. So this is how they respond. Meron din tayong tinatawag na communication. So responses involve a presentation or exchange of information. For example, the hand is viewed by the responder as explaining something to someone, conveying a message. Next is subcategories of interpersonal exhibition. So responses displaying or exhibiting want to obtain approval from others or to seek attention of others. For example, showing off his muscles. Next is engagement ring, nail polish. So this display or exhibits one to obtain approval from others or to seek attention to others. And next is direction. So it's obvious. It's domineering or directing others or involving influencing the activities. So let's say policeman saying stop, giving orders to someone, guiding or directing a child by a parent not to do this. Next category is aggression. So this imply giving pain, hostility, or aggression. But although there's a certain domain that classifies an expression, the hand as a much higher degree of, kumbaga, parang abnormalities on his part. But on this aggression, it's just mild because it's normal to have aggressive behavior whenever we have interpersonal activities, right? So but in this way, in this example, it's just mild lang naman. For example, trying to scare someone or slapping, right? So that's a sign of aggression, but it's actually normal. And insulting or inflicting pain, showing threat. So next domain is environmental. So in interpersonal, normally ang yung distinction or description doon sa hand is there is you inaan mo yung connected dyan sa tao, but in environmental connected dyan sa mga non-human objects yung responses ng responder or ng client. So for example, these are the subcategories. Acquisition. For example, so acquisition is grabbing or taking something, or more general actions like closing doors or gripping steering wheels. So acquisition has a positive tone in terms of demonstrating a performance. A response to a stimuli in the acquisition involves an attempt to acquire or obtain certain goal or object. For example, trying to catch a ball. So kaya nga acquisition, you're trying to acquire something. Next subcategories is active, involves an action or attitude designed constructively to manipulate, attain, or alter object or goal. For example, molding a clay, building bricks. And next is passive. This attitude of rest or relaxation in relation to force of gravity, meaning napaka-passive, hindi gumagalaw. Although it's shows a manifestation of connection between a non-human object. For example, relaxed hand like a statue of the thinker. Next domain is maladjustive. According to Wagner, 1983, the third domain of maladjustive category represents generally neurotic protocol and consists of tension, crippled, and fear responses, whereby tension represent anxiety, inadequacy, and crippled indicates inferiorities, and fear reflects avoidance pattern of a person from danger perceived in the outer environment. So I mean to say he is very there's a problem involving here when you have this kind of responses. So maladaptive responses indicate distress of some kind. They can be responses that insist a fist is tense to hold in anger or a hand is warding off a blow. They also involve responses that indicate the person the hand is attached to is injured, like saying the hand is the hand of a dead man. So that is kumbaga napaka-creepy, no? Right? It's as if he is in a state of anxiety, wherein he depicts that picture as a hand of a dead man. Next is psychotic. So this is the next level of, next to maladjustive. So this is the fourth main domain, wherein the client already withdrawn, okay, and considered as psychotic protocol and described often as
failure and bizarre responses, meaning out of reality. Okay? So, out of reality responses na hindi na siya nagagrasp sa reality. It's a sign of withdrawal. Okay? So, normally, meron yan yung merong schizophrenia, yan, some personality disorders, or mental retardation where a person is not in touch with reality itself. That's why they see, they perceive the hand different from the normal people. The hand test may end up, the test takers would be positive or negative. Remember guys, the hand test may ended up as the test takers would be positive or negative because we have our own perspective in life. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. That's why Wagner came up with a ratio called the acting out ratio that indicated based on the hand test score how likely each subject was to act out violently. So para lang mabalance, kailangan balance din yung positive and negative because not everything and not everyone would react positive doon sa hand gestures na meron sa illustrations. So let's now proceed to the next, reliability of hand test. So how will we say that the test is reliable? So I just come up with different research and that utilize this projective technique and show a very very high reliability. In 1979, Wagner and others conducted a study to test the projective technique capacity to predict behavioral tendency of normal female participants with mean age of 20.6. The test has a standard deviation of 1.79 and the agreement between the two examiners was 89.34 Spearman correlation. So therefore, the test has a perfect agreement. So meron din tayo in 1990. Again, it was Wagner and friends, provide another evidence that would determine high interscore reliability of the test. So in this research, and this kumbaga yung the reliability, it score also perfect agreement on any of the 15 subcategories. Let's now proceed to the validity of the test. Does it really actually test what it's supposed to measure? It's okay? Mali ata sinabi ko Okay, for example, during 1968, Campos reported a high AOR. Alam naman natin yung AOR, kanina sinabi ko, for children than for adults, and suggested that this index can discriminate between aggressive and non-aggressive as well as assaultive and no assaultive delinquents. Alright. Rush and Wagner administered the hand test to 24 female children who were sexually abused. And upon analysis, so there are three kinds of responses among them. So one type of response appeared to show psychotic features such as perceiving the hands as engaged in blatantly sexual acts. The second type was characterized by indexes of maladjustment and neurosis. Okay, yun yung kanyang domain. But showed a good contract with reality. While the third type, yung kanilang responses is just normal. These results seem consistent with apparently conflicting views within literature describing sexually abused children as a wrong impression wherein sexually abused children were seen or viewed as deeply disturbed, depressed, insecure, and inadequate, not discernibly affected by the trauma. So that is the misconception, because some of the according to Wagner's hand test, some of the students, some of the younger abused children hindi naman nag-manifest yung tinatawag na mga trauma, or at least they are masking it or whatsoever for very strong women, ganyan. So that's the end of my lesson about hand test, which can be utilized to diagnose certain ailments, or to kumbaga para mailabas yung mga overt behavior that is actually hidden doon sa client. So that's all. Thank you and goodbye.